We're back to Season 7, the season whose theme was, say it with me, we ran out of ideas. In desperation, trying to fill things out, the creators turned to a rejected Season 6 script. Rejected because it broke one of Gene's rules. No space pirates. Well, with the well so run dry, they not only went back to the script, but ultimately made it into a two-parter. Because when your show goes on too long, eventually you can't help but notice the quality slip, the performers seem tired, and it's clear the best days are behind it, so they're going into the multi-parters so they can phone it in. I, for one, can't get these 2 reviews over soon enough, because after that is my show's 10th anniversary with, which I'll be doing over multiple parts next month. Now, though, we should probably get on with Gambit, shouldn't we? We start off in a seedy bar, although not so seedy that it has a Zima sign up, so we can be thankful for that. Our heroes are subtly making inquiries from the locals. Troy comes onto the bartender, so he'll at least be cooperative, and we quickly glean they're looking for Picard.
Sure you haven't seen him?
Human. About 2 meters tall.
2 meters? Frakes and Dorn aren't even that tall, and they're giants. Apparently, whoever wrote this mixed up Patrick Stewart with Dwayne Johnson. Worf is having better luck, no doubt having described Picard as a 200-kilo man wearing a cowboy hat. So Riker talks to an Uridian who's busy being shifty. He's helping out because Worf told the guy that Riker's hunting for the man who knocked up his sister, which is probably a novel experience for Riker, to be on the other side of that chase. The scum is willing to talk, but in return for 5 bars of latinum, and safe transport once the bartender makes clear his loose lips are going to wind up leading to loose teeth. Beverly arrives with a phaser to convince the bartender to stay out of it, but what really makes her dangerous is that she can pull off that hat. Damn. If I wore something like that, I'd look like one of those guys telling Mario the princess is in another castle. The scum explains that Picard had been questioned by a group of aliens, which quickly grew violent. Amid loud protests of, "Not in the face! Not in the face!" he was thrown against the wall, then shot, instantly vaporized. Everyone is shocked by this, and understandably so. We've still got a whole season left to finish. After the titles, this situation leads to the natural discussion of grief, although handled in a wholly unnatural way. Riker and Troy argue over mourning and all that in a way that tries and fails to make its ham-fisted dialogue believable. What doesn't help is that this whole situation only calls attention to the fact that we've been down this road before. Not this scene specifically, but the idea of it, and why replacing Will with Thomas would have injected some freshness into the show. Because, and I'm getting ahead of myself here, I know, it's not until the tedium of the norm is left behind for the unusual that Gambit starts to improve, and would have been enhanced all the more with a new dynamic. Because sending Will Riker off to captain his own ship wouldn't have demanded that he never appear again, after all. Rather than wasting this on a scene of Troy and Riker arguing over feelings, we could have had friction between Will Riker and his own first officer that could have added a sense of breadth to this world and still allowed him to follow the overall path of this episode. We then would have not only had Data in command of the Enterprise plot and all the dynamics that we'll see here, but also Data needing to work with the first officer of Riker's own ship once, well, what happens to him happens. Gambit would have been the epic 2-part intersection of 2 crews as Will Riker returns for an adventure after his absence. What we get instead is Riker and Troy bitch at each other again. After that, an admiral calls up to address Riker's plan, which is to track down those responsible and bring them to justice. The local authorities aren't likely to do much, and losing the captain of the flagship in a bar fight is just an indignity too far. The Admiral agrees, so Riker goes in to question the scum, who is playing coy and doesn't seem to get that he's dealing with someone who's not really in the mood for that. He goes so far as to ask for a shuttlecraft in return for the information Riker wants, while Riker offers a counter-offer of, "Talk, and maybe I won't give you to the Klingons who have a number of warrants for you." The shove against the wall no doubt helps bring home the point that unless he helps, this guy's going to get beamed down to Rura Penthe and nothing but a t-shirt that says Kahless eats dicks in hell. So, they've got a lead, a system with only one M-class planet. Good for archaeological digging, but not much else. Riker plans to check it out, and despite Data's protests, will be heading down personally to check things out. Data doesn't press the point, otherwise he might wind up on Rura Penthe too. There's signs of recent activity in the area, damage of some kind consistent with the weapon used in the bar.
It looks as if someone could have just dropped.
Don't shoot me, I found it like this! The rest are pinned down by weapons fire, and the fight gets pretty serious between the away team and the mercenaries. Pretty expensive, too. They had to use a lot more effects than usual because of the time of year. You might not know this, but California has a problem with wildfires. When they came to shoot this on location, they realized, oh yeah, we can't set off any pyrotechnics for this firefight, or we'll need a real firefighter to deal with the problem. So they had to add all the explosions and sparks and stuff later on. Anyway, the mercenaries snag the artifact and Riker both and beam away, leaving Worf there to feel rather stupid. To lose one captain is tragic. To lose two looks like carelessness. Okay, but they beamed away, so they must have a base or a ship around here somewhere. More likely the latter.
Commander, we're picking up a vessel leaving orbit.
Why was it not detected earlier?
I was on the Cosby Show. I'm used to not noticing things I shouldn't. They get into another fight here, but no mercenary ship is a match for the Enterprise. So instead they cloak or something to hide from sensors, leaving Data to feel rather stupid now. I mean, Worf was one thing. He made an entire career out of losing to aliens. But Data's supposed to be the one who technobabbles up an answer. Just having the ship slip away? That's the most embarrassing screw-up since declaring a fish as an amphibian. So he gets to work, digging into things and learning that there is a group that's been raiding archaeological digs all across the sector. My money's on Nazis. They're drawn to archaeology like moths to a flame. Data explains that the ship has a special energy-absorbing tech that renders it undetectable to long-range sensors. So after a certain distance, it just seems to vanish. He and Geordi discuss how they might defeat this, but Worf stands up in frustration at not trying to chase the mercenaries down. But Data says that rather than stumbling about like a drunk who just heard his girlfriend's husband come through the front door, they should maybe try to figure out what's going on here. That could tell them where to actually find the bad guys then. Speaking of which, we can catch up with them and finally get to see their leader, played by Richard Lynch, who, seeming to call back to his glory days of being an 80s low-budget bad guy, is sporting a huge rock star mane. After bullying one of his flunkies over the engines, he demands to know what Riker was doing down there, and when Riker gives him shit, hits a button on his belt that sends Riker to his knees in agony, presumably the full force of his guest starring role on Manimal.
The setting is usually sufficient. However, if necessary, it can go much higher.
Gee, it's up to Galactica 1980. The pain is indescribable. Much to Riker's shock, among the crew of mercenaries is Picard. Oh, sorry, I should have given you a moment to overcome the shock of learning that the captain did not die early in the season off-screen. We never could have seen that coming, huh? Yeah, Picard is alive, and going by the name of Galen, though you have to admit he's got a very effective disguise here. Looking at him right now, you'd have no idea that Picard is really 2 meters tall. Picard/Galen calls for Riker to be killed, and to justify it, well, what's the opposite of damning with faint praise? He says that Riker's awful by listing all these traits that are actually appealing if you're a criminal. I mean, it's like saying, oh, you don't want to date him. He's all strong and muscly from his volunteer work building houses for storm survivors. But his demands are interrupted by a technical problem with the ship, one that Picard knows that Riker could solve in order to press Buran. So, after a little tech magic, Riker saves the ship and gloats to Picard over it, either to maintain the ruse or because he's always wanted to. Back on the planet where Riker has been picked up, Data notes that the artifacts here were from a Romulan offshoot, and the place where Picard was studying was also related to Romulans, so the mercenaries are looking for Romulan artifacts, I guess. Time to head back to the ship and see if there are any more such sites in the area, and sure enough, there's a potential site on a nearby planet with a Federation science station. So they call ahead to let them know that space pirates are likely on their way. That way the scientists can get ready to throw their lab books and microscopes at the bad guys. While the Enterprise is racing to beat the pirates there, over on the pirate ship, Picard has the chance to now explain in private to Riker what happened. That the weapon was actually rigged to the transporter. So instead of vaporizing him, it kidnapped him. In order that Galen could go through the artifacts trying to find whatever the boss is looking for in order to sell to their clients. Picard rigged up that engine malfunction and set everything so that Baran would warm up to Riker because Baran doesn't like Picard. The more he thinks that Picard hates Riker, the better everyone will be. Obviously, Picard subscribes to the method school of acting. Things eventually get around to that planet with the science outpost, which Picard tries to discourage by mentioning all of the uber weapons that are defending it. But Baran knows that they can grab that station and stick its head into a toilet, so he's not in the least deterred. So instead, Picard suggests that they use Riker to try to talk their way past the defenses. And finally, Baran goes along with the plan, although he seems kind of bummed that he doesn't get to blow anything up now. Talara, the Romulan who has been advising Baran this whole time, meets Picard in private while he's analyzing the stuff that they stole, but mostly it's just a conversation around, stop being such a dick to the guy who can kill you. You might notice that she's played by Robin Curtis, who was Savik in 2 of the Trek films, so apparently someone really likes the way she looks in pointy ears. Because of the warning from the Enterprise, the trick of using Riker fails, so Picard takes down the shields to avoid destroying the whole damn thing, allowing them to beam up some of the artifacts before the shields are back up again. So a frustrated Baran says, this time, destroy the whole outpost. Only then, the Enterprise shows up. So now Baran wants Riker to sort that thing out. Blow it up if you have to. By God, we're going to blow up something today. Riker decides to play the bad guy here, trying to order the ship away, and when it doesn't, he's going to use his command codes to lower the shields.
That doesn't make sense. He knows those codes would have been changed as soon as he was captured.
Logic! Savor this rare and precious morsel where they actually have a sense of security. Data figures this is part of some plan by Riker, so he has the shields drop anyway, allowing the space pirates to fire on the Enterprise. Cliffhanger! What will happen? We'll find out in Gambit Part 2.
All hail the Overlord! All hail the Overlord!
Sit down.
That's my sister. She's angry. She's got a vicious temper.